This is Mao's Cultural Revolution by me, Drake, and Aaron. So, this cultural revolution is taking place over in China, where across the world from them, if you go from the right, and we're their next door neighbors if you go from the left. This is Mao Zedong. He was born in December 26, 1893, and he died on September 9th, 1976. He is the main culprit of the revolution. He caused the whole thing, I guess you could say, the main protagonist. So the way he got into power was through China's Civil War in 1927 to 1949. He was on the communist side, the CCP, and they were fighting against the nationalists. So essentially, communism versus democracy. China's Communist Party, the CCP, did not want U.S. involvement in, led by Mao, and the Nationalist Party, the KMT. Uh, Obviously, those don't add up, but it's because the KMT translates to the Chinese National Party. They were nationalists, fought for democracy, and was led by Chiang Kai shek. A little bit more about Chiang Kai shek. He was born on Halloween 1887. He died April 5th, 1975, and fought against Mao, leader of the KMT, fought for democracy. The end of the Civil War was brought sheerly by death. 7 million people died just during the Civil War alone. For reference, this is 1 million people. What had happened to the KMT is they were pushed out of China, fled to Taiwan over here, and the CCP gained control of China. The Great Leap Forward, essentially, Mao wants to industrialize the entirety of China. So he stops everything to produce steel, literally everything. So all farmers, all factory workers, all everything, to go melt their doorknobs, go melt their pans, go produce steel. What this was expected to do is to flourish the economy, make everybody wealthy, and make Chinese a strong, or make China a strong civilization. What it actually did is ended up starving tons of people, tons and tons of people, because if everybody stops doing their normal jobs, like for example, farmers stop farming to go melt their doorknobs, then who's producing their food? What this caused was lots of death, about 45 million just in the Great Leap Forward alone. Between 2 and 3 million of these victims were tortured, enslaved, and treated like trash, garbage. For reference, one report dated November 30th, 1960. Wang Xiu had one of his ears chopped off, his legs tied up with iron wire, and a 10-kilogram stone dropped on his back before he was branded with a sizzling tool. Can you guess his crime? Digging up a potato. When a boy stole a handful of grain in Hunman village, can you guess his punishment? That's right, you got it. His father buried him alive on the spot. 45 million deaths is enough to kill the entire population of any of these countries. Not all of these countries combined, but any one of these single countries.
So the Great Leap Forward ends in 1961, even though there's still a few more years left. They had to end it early because 45 million deaths is crazy. And also, the steel that the farmers were making was terrible quality. And so they weren't even really able to use it for anything. So basically, China's Communist Party had to end it early. And Mao was okay with that because even though it was his plan, again, this 45 million deaths is crazy. So they had to end it early. And they already ruined a lot of trust in their government, and just keeping it going would just ruin so much more trust. So this leads us into Mao's new goal to modernize the global and economical powerhouse because he wants China now to become a global powerhouse, just like the US or like Russia. So his plans now is to lead us into the Cultural Revolution. He starts the Cultural Revolution in 1966. As you can see in these, like this hand right here, that is the Little Red Book, which I will go a little bit more into in one of the upcoming slides. Right here, as you can see, here's another picture of the Little Red Book. Mao wants to regain support, so he creates this book right here with his quotes and stuff because they don't have the internet yet. So how do you get everyone to know more about you or like be inspired as he wants it? So his idea was to create a book and mass produce it so that tons of people, even the peasants on the sides, could read his books and support his ideas. So he creates the Red Book in 1964 in April. Red Book is full of quotes and stuff from his speeches, but they've been simplified down so anyone can read them. The Little Red Book, he even made it where it was like almost a law that you had to have it on you at all times, and you were expected to read from the book multiple times per day. The Little Red Book actually really inspires the Red Guard, and the Red Guard is a bunch of middle schoolers, high schoolers, and early college students who've been fed propaganda saying that they are going to change the country for the better, that they will increase the country and they will be the ones to bring it to a new era and fix it from its current state. And so they are fed all this propaganda. They have the Little Red Book, which is a huge inspiration for them. It makes them view Mao almost as a god because they think of him as just such a high being. So when they actually got the chance to meet him in person, which is in Tiananmen Square, August 18th, 1966, there's a million Red Guards here. It's a hard picture to see because there wasn't a good picture in 1966, really, of a million people standing here. But that right there is a picture of Mao Zedong right there. And they actually got to see him in person where he did a speech. And this inspired them even more. And what Mao Zedong wanted was for them to get rid of the four olds. So the four olds, this is propaganda on the left here. He wanted them to get rid of the four olds, old customs, old culture, old habits, old ideas. He wanted them to change China and get rid of anything that was considered old values of China and get rid of it so that we can become a new China and become a global powerhouse and bring it into the next stage of their country. And this is just another picture right here of the four old ideas, obviously, like, whatever like ideas they came up with, old habits, chopsticks and stuff, culture, religious beliefs and stuff. They actually didn't have strong religious beliefs because Mao thought that that was old culture. So actually a lot of the Red Guards didn't have much beliefs. And then old customs also. And this takes us into our video, which is going to be an interview from someone who is a former Red Guard at the time.
In 1966, I was in the middle school when the Cultural Revolution started.
The biggest nation on earth, China, is in turmoil. Is China's aging leader, Mao Zedong, losing control? Has Mao gone mad, driven perhaps to megalomania by the hysterical adulation of the teenage Red Guard?
Of course, I joined. It's glorious to join here. I was totally pour my energy, even my life, into it to support whatever Mao asked me to do.
Mao had decided to mobilize the young people as the driving force of a vast campaign to purify the Communist Party. There was to be a new revolution, a cultural revolution, a revolution in people's thinking.
We went to Beijing. Mao received us after we arrived. We walk out in the middle of night because in the morning we are going to walk through Tiananmen Square to see our great leader. It was exciting. We thought he was a god.
Inspired by Mao, the Red Guards went wild in their enthusiasm to keep the revolution alive. They worship Mao as their leader and follow his instructions without question. They consider long hair and Western-style clothes uncommunist.
Teachers were the target of the political campaign. Mao keep taught us they have to receive the re-education by the worker and peasant. My female teacher, I love. She liked to wear beauty clothes. She cared for appearance. There was a criminal accusation. One boy went to her bedroom and lead so many people. She went there to cut her hair. I went there too late. The hair has been cut already. He was humiliated, and I couldn't help. I couldn't rescue her. Shame on me. Shame on me.
After reports of riotings, beatings up, and even murder, the Red Guards seem to have gone too far. Their leaders have told them to cool off and go and help with the harvest.
The end of 1967, I began to kind of reflection, and I found that Mao was not in control of the Cultural Revolution. And we lucky live in the southern China. There is a choice to escape to Hong Kong. I took this risk and begin to my free life. I studied sociology and later on went to UC Berkeley for political science. In America, I settled with my family, children, grandchildren, and also my career, my business. I'm 70 now. Now is the Red Guard generation 70. I hope that they reflect, they regret, they re-examine what should we prevent this kind of human tragedy happen again.
So as you can see in that video, that former Red Guard, he actually talks about his time in Tiananmen Square also seeing Mao Zedong. And as you can see, he even talks about how they viewed him as a god. And once he realized that it's not really, he was actually a human being and wasn't a god, that's when he left. But a lot of the Red Guards still viewed him as like a god figure to them and a figure to fight for. So when he told them to get rid of the four olds, they went into very like depth to try and get rid of everything he wanted. So the Red Guards actually, what they would do is anyone that was considered intellectual was an old idea. So they wanted to re-educate them. So what they would do is torture like teachers or any intellectuals and stuff. If you were scientists and stuff, they torture you. And they actually had, it was worse than that. They actually had a lot of ways that they would torture their victims and stuff. They would do beatings. They would, if it was a female teacher, oftenly they would shave their hair to embarrass them. They would make them wear signs that would have on it like derogatory names, and they were required to wear that at all times. And if they ever took it off, then the Red Guard or the students in the school would beat up their teachers that took that off. They would make you stand in awkward positions for hours at a time. And if you ever like moved or broke it, like that awkward position that you were standing in, they would beat you. They would make you clean like all this dirty stuff, like be a school janitor, but you'd have to clean with your bare hands. So clean the toilets with your bare hands. They'd make them sing derogatory songs about themselves. And if they didn't meet the standards as the Red Guard wanted, then they would be beaten also. Worst of all, the Red Guard actually viewed these acts as honorable, which I don't know how you can view this stuff that they were doing as honorable, but the propaganda and everything around them somehow convinced them that what they were doing was actually right and good for their country. And that's not even the worst of it, actually. Between August and September of 1966, they actually killed 1,772 people. They ransacked 114,000 homes and left 77,000 people homeless. And these were all considered bad people or intellectuals and stuff that they viewed as old culture or old ideas. And not even that, most of this stuff is confidential because China tries to cover this stuff up. But hidden documents and confidential documents actually show in one of the provinces of China, they actually show 137 times of one of those people being killed, they were actually eaten. And that the predicted number of people who've actually committed these acts is in the thousands. There's thousands of cannibals in the Red Guard. And it would be bad if it was like for food and stuff because they didn't have much food because of the Great Leap that happened years earlier. But it was because of ideological reasons and Maoism that they were doing this. China's government actually would orchestrate this, and they would kill that person and then promote the Red Guard actually eating that person's body afterward. Now, the sent down youth actually is because the Red Guard was a bunch of factions, because since they all formed in schools and they were just kids, they weren't actually some big unit that was all like had ranks and stuff. They were just a bunch of kids and stuff, fed this propaganda, and then created their groups in their schools. So when these different schools would see each other, they'd have different backgrounds, maybe more politically, more poor, more money. And so they'd actually clash, saying who's actually better and helping their country more. And they would fight and oftentimes kill each other because of this. And so when Mayo was looking at this, he had all these people and all this chaos happening, that the solution he and the CCP came up with was send all these kids down to the countryside to educate the people at the side, which, I mean, it kind of worked. They were able to educate them a little bit. But as you can tell in this picture on the left right here, a lot of them were just sent there to work and create more food. And they did not have the best living conditions there either. And so, not even having the best living conditions made it terrible there. They were forced there for years. They were forced away from their family. This wasn't optional. So, a lot of these families are split up from their kids that were part of the Red Guard or just the youth in general. There was not really a way to distinguish between the two. So, a lot of just the youth was sent there. And so, after a few years later, once this all died down, they actually weren't able to get home because they had passports, and you needed passports to get back into the city. So a lot of these kids were actually forced to stay on the farms when they grew up, and were not ever able to see their family again. And this is just a picture of them carrying guns and stuff, probably in the countryside where they were working on the farms, because a lot of the Red Guard actually had weapons and stuff, because Mayo was okay with the Red Guard committing violence, but if you were not part of the Red Guard, it was actually considered a crime. That's, I don't even know how you set that boundary, but yeah, if you're part of the Red Guard, you're allowed to commit these atrocities. So September 9th, 1976, Mayo dies. And so this takes the entire Cultural Revolution to a halt, because everyone was doing this stuff in Mayo's name, think they're making the country better. And so with him dead, their god or their figure they've been fighting for this entire time is dead. So it almost brings the entire Cultural Revolution to a crash.
What are the big effects of poor leadership on an organization? For China and Mao's cultural evolution, some of the biggest points were political instability, little economic growth, a large generation gap, corruption within the CCP. CCP suffers a loss in legitimacy, and of course, millions of deaths. Here's a graph that represents the lack of trust within the CCP by its citizens. A study conducted in the 1980s shows the percent of Chinese youth who trust the American press versus that of the Chinese press. This shows how the citizens of China at this time have decreased trust for their government. With the passing of Mao Zedong, Huo Gufang takes power in the China Communist Party in September of 1976. While in power, seeing the population's distrust in the CCP after the effects of the Cultural Revolution, it was clear that changes had to be made. So Huo sought after arresting the 4 other prominent political leaders of the CCP and attempting to repair the nation and fix the faults of Mao Zedong.
Here's a picture of the Gang of Four trial in 1981. It includes Zhang Qing, Wang Hongwen, Yao Wenyang, and Zhang Qinqiao. Huo Gufang labeled them as the Gang of Four and essentially blamed them for all the problems of the Cultural Revolution. After Yao Wenyang was released from his 20-year prison sentence in 1996, he lived in Hitsu in Shanghai and became the last surviving member of the Gang of Four. According to China's official news agency, he died of diabetes on December 23, 2005, at the age of 74. Jiang Qing, widow of revolutionary leader Mao Zedong and the most prominent figure of the Gang of Four, committed suicide on May 14th of 1981. She was given the death sentence that later was commuted to life in prison. In 1998, Zhang Qinqiao was released from prison to undergo medical treatment. He lived in the obscurity of Shanghai for the remainder of his life. Zhang died from pancreatic cancer in April of 2005. And last but not least, Wang Hongwen killed 2 of the agents that were trying to arrest him and wounded himself before being subdued. He was tried and sentenced to life imprisonment in 1981. He died of liver cancer at Beijing Hospital on the 3rd of August, 1992, at the age of 56.
The damage Mao has caused in his Cultural Revolution has also made the need for China to make drastic economic reforms to try and fix China's battered economy. Modern day China is still trying to fix the hole left behind by Mao Zedong. Though his goals during the Cultural Revolution were to modernize China's economy and improve citizen support toward the government, Mao ultimately failed, causing China's economy to be severely damaged and for the trust of China's citizens decreased even more. Mao's policies created in office during the Cultural Revolution have left all of China to suffer the actions that Mao made. Any questions?